Welcome to another video breakdown here today. I'm going to be focusing on doing the chuck of a beef. I'm going to go a little bit slower, hopefully give a little more information and do a detailed breakdown. The pieces that we're going to be focusing on today are our chuck roll here. This is a boneless one, for example, it's already pulled out. And then our shoulder clod with our flat iron top blade roast attached here, and it also has the teres major on here. So when you start breaking down your chuck, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your shoulder clod off. You can see the arm muscle comes in here off the shank, and then it ties in. Now you have a bone that runs from here over to the shoulder joint with the scapula. So that's the first line I'm going to follow. I'm going to come in behind the elbow until I hit the bone. And I'm over on top of the bone the whole way. That's where I know where I need to stop. Now you can see the shoulder clod muscle laying in here. You can see the seam right here. It's easy on a grass-fed beef. It'll be harder if you're working with grain-fed. But what you need to do is follow that over until you feel the top of the shoulder blade muscle. Now, the shoulder blade ridge, you can always feel for it, and you want to come on the brisket side of that ridge. So what I'm going to do, I found my shoulder seam, I'm feeling for it, and I'm going to put my knife right into it, all the way down. Now what that's going to allow me to do is to pull the flat iron or top blade roast really cleanly here, so that I'm not wasting any meat. So what I need to do is to finish opening this seam up. Now if you look down inside here, you can see where I followed the bone, and that's exactly what I'm using as my guide. There's a little bit of connective tissue here that you need to cut through. And I'm going to bring it into the top of my top blade section. Now the next thing I need to do, I'm going to turn this so you can see a little better. There's a seam right under the underneath side of the shoulder clod. What I'm going to do is to come in there and to open that up. Now I don't need to worry about my brisket here. You shouldn't be cutting into that. And there's nothing you're going to hurt underneath of the shoulder clod muscle. So I'm going to work on pulling that seam up. And as you come through the muscle, you're going to notice where it ends and where that muscle seam wants to separate. Now once you get down in here, we're going to be keeping our teres major on today, onto our shoulder clod. So you're going to get a little bit deeper. You can see where that seam is here. That muscle just wants to pull apart, and we're going to let it. We're going to work with it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my top blade a little more free. Make sure I'm getting a good pull, getting the connective tissue and not the muscle to come free. And the last thing that's connecting it here is this muscle that runs on the underside of the shoulder blade. So I'm going to keep breaking this open. And when I cut through this, it will just start to pull off. Now again, I'm going a little slower so you guys can see where you need to go and where the seams are. Down here, you'll just need to finish it with your knife. You've got a nice clean shoulder clod. So, if you want to clean this up, what you want to do, this piece here was the muscle that was attached on the back side of the shoulder blade. So what you're going to do, you're going to come in, take that off, it's just trim. Now there should be a little bit of fat here, and if we take that back, what you'll see is our teres major muscle sitting right here. This is a great muscle to add value to your shoulder clod breakdown, your chuck breakdown. It's a great seller to restaurants. It's a really nice tender steak. All you need to do is to clean the silver skin off of it here. And what you're left with is, according to the Beef Council, the second most tender cut on the beef. So you can do it into little medallions here. It works great on salads or just on the grill. Now if we want to go further and we want to break the shoulder clod down, you can see here's the clod muscle and here's our top blade. What we need to do is just find the seam where that top blade meets our shoulder clod. And you can see where that muscle separates down here. What you're going to do, you're just going to come in there take that out. Now we'll knock this tail down a little bit, and you're left with a nice shoulder clod muscle here. If you're gonna cut steaks out of this, you're gonna go from tip to tip. Go this way, those would be charcoal steaks. We go larger with that, the more we're gonna end up with. A nice center cut shoulder roast, great in the crock pot. Makes nice trim, good kebab meat out of the rest of that. Now here, this is our top blade roast. We have a little bit of the membrane left on there. I'm gonna clean these up. Now this is another great cut to add value into your chuck breakdown. What you can get out of here are the flat iron steaks or the butter steaks. Now you need to remember that there's a very tough membrane that runs down the middle of it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come down to my membrane, and just like I'm filleting a piece of fish, once I get on top of it there, I'm gonna be pushing down with my knife right out and through, so that when I'm done, I've got membrane left here, I've got a nice clean steak there for my flat iron. I can do the same thing on the back side, take the fat off and fillet my flat iron off. So if we're coming back to our chuck, the next thing you need to do is to remove your shank. It's a pretty easy seam. Once you have your shoulder clod off here, I'll flip it around so you can see it. You can see this seam just wants to come right open. All we're gonna do is let it. We're just gonna cut through the remaining connective tissue there. Just break this off. Again, you're not gonna hurt anything underneath of there. There's nothing of value. And there's the shank. If you want to, you can cross cut it this direction. Make great seat bones in the wintertime, otherwise just grind it. I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna remove the rest of the shoulder blade. So again, here's my bone that I'm following. All I'm doing is I'm gonna press into the side so I can follow that bone as close as possible. Now again, if you come in here and pull more than you're cutting, you'll get a nice clean break off of the top of the shoulder blade. All I'm doing is letting that muscle come off where it wants to. Now the last thing I need to do is come underneath of my shoulder blade here. Now this will become the bottom of your chuck roll. So you want to make sure you're pulling that as clean as you can. Now here we have what's called the mock tender. You can cut it into fillet medallions. It's a nice rounded muscle, but there is a nice piece of connective tissue that runs down the middle of it. It's inferior to the teres major in terms of texture and taste. I usually just use it for ground. You can see it also makes a nice medallion cut. You'd want to do a braise on this because of that piece of connective tissue. It gets pretty tough. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to continue to just take this fat back along the seam of the top of the chuck. I'm going to do this right now so that I can see where I'm going a little bit better. Just start to square up and set the ends of my chuck here. So what I'm left with, I have my brisket over here, I have my neck bones here, and my chuck rolls right in the middle. So I'm going to start not right on the neck bones. I want a little tail on my chuck. I'm going to come through to where those end, and then I'm going to lift up. And what I'm wanting to do, I'll show you on this side, is to separate the neck off from the rest of the chuck. So how I'm going to do that is to pull up on this corner and just work into my neck bones. I want to get my neck free. I'm going to come up to the top and get that meat off the bones. Come back through, cut all this down here. So the last thing I need to do is come around Take the rest of the chuck down off these ribs, and this is one of the harder cuts. You need to come down and around the top of those neck bones. You don't want to leave this on there. That's your chuck eye roll. You're going to take as much of it with you as you can. So now we're left with our untrimmed chuck roll. What we need to do, you can see we still have some bones on the back side here. Just going to come underneath those, trim them off. We need to take this tendon that runs in here out. What you want to do is to start on the back side. Just peel with your fingers. Again, if you're using your knife, you're liable to slip and cut into the meat, but you can do this just as easily with your hands. That'll protect your cuts. Once you have a hold of it, it will start to pull out here. You'll need to finish this top section with your knife. Now the last thing we need to do is just square this up a little bit. Take the edge off where some of that dead meat is. We'll come in here. You can see where our neck started to dip down. This makes a really nice ground beef here. So now what we're left with is our chuck roll. We're going to end up a little bit here. Now if you're going to merchandise this, you'd start with this end. What I like to do is take a good 4 to 6 inches off before I start cutting my chuck roast. And what I have here, you see, is the end of my ribeye. It's also the chuck eye steak section. It's not as tender as the ribeye, but it's a great steak. It's a good way to add a little more value into your case. In this under section, you can cut this into Sierra cut steaks. We're going to grind that, and then the rest of this would just be ground. One other thing you can do is to come in top here and just seam out the rest of your chuck. So all you want to do is just continue to find those gaps in the muscle. We'll take the rest of this chuck eye section off here. And then you're getting into some of the newer cuts that the U.S. Beef Council is coming out with. The Sierra cut steaks, the Denver cut steaks. The most important thing you need to remember when you're working with your truck is there's a lot of connective tissue. You want to be cutting against the grain. You mostly want to be doing butterfly cuts out of here. So what I mean by that, once I get this all trimmed up, as you can see, I've got a really strong grain moving this direction. What I want to do is to shorten that grain up. The shorter the grain, the more tender it's going to be. You butterfly it out, and you've got a great, really nice, tender, fall apart piece of meat. So again, if I'm going to butterfly, I go halfway down. I go almost to the bottom of the meat. You can see where my knife is stopping. The neck's cut over all the way down. Now if you want to add a little more value, wrap some bacon around that. You got another nice fillet style steak for your counter. So I hope that gives you a little more information, a better in-depth breakdown of how to do the chuck. A little quieter environment today, a little bit more information. So I hope that helps, and I hope you have a great day.